always exciting to look out at a room full of women. I so rarely, if ever, do. I know all of you feel the same way, so still.
So Cheryl, you've started lots of conversations in the world this year, of course. But one of the conversations was, how does she do it all? And of course, there's people saying, well, she must be dropping the ball somewhere. And of course, they say, well, she must be dropping the ball at Facebook. Read our story, and it's clear that she's not. She's orchestrating the advertising deals, very much the public face of Facebook, and it turns out to be a good thing for your CEO, who likes to do engineering and product development, and it works. It's a good partnership in that way. So it made me think, the same way in Lean In, you say you should be careful who you choose as your life partner. Maybe you should be careful of who you choose as your management partner.
I really agree with that. I think so often as managers, it's just a totally natural tendency that we hire people and we like people like us. The problem is if too many people hire people like them, we have too many, men and largely white men running things. But even more importantly, forgetting even race and gender, you get to just your style and what you like to do. And if you hire all people who have the same style and like to do the things you like to do, then you're all, your kid's soccer game running towards the ball. I try in my own hiring, and I think Mark did this with me, is to hire people who are complementary to me. So, Mark is a product guy.
Right.
He was very clear. He wanted to run and build the product. He wanted someone to be his business partner who would run the business side and not do the product. If I was a product person, I'm not sure who would run the business, and I also think we might really not always agree on stuff, but by basically dividing and conquering and working together, I think we're good partners. The same thing, I try to hire people who fill the holes that I either don't do as well or don't want to do.
And it's interesting, when people heard that I was interviewing you, a number of women said to me, well, it's interesting because she chose a job where she was only going to be number two, clearly. She was going to stay number two. How is that leaning in? And then it made me think, well, how could you, being number two enabled you, also gave you freedom and flexibility to do Lean In, which is a world-changing book. Could you have done that as CEO of Microsoft or CEO of Disney, to throw out some rumors out there? But what do you say to that? And don't you want the number one job at some point?
So there's two questions there. One is about what do I like to do, and the second is the question of women and the boxes we put them in. Mm-hmm. So for me, I want to do stuff I care about and believe in, and I love Facebook. I really do. I love our mission of connecting people across the world, and so I think that that's what I want to do. And if I found something that had a deeper mission, maybe I'd do that, but it's hard for me to imagine that because I really love the mission of this company. And that's much more important to me than number one or number two, and I have a great working relationship with Mark. But I think there's a deeper question. There's a deeper question, which is, this box we put women. I believe we live in a world of and for men. Men can have careers and families. We assume they can. Every boy coming out of school, every man assumes he can have both, and we're always asking women, how do you do it all? Mm-hmm. By which we mean, how do you have a family and a job? Same thing with books. Lots of male CEOs write books when they're CEO. They also play in golf tournaments and race boats.
Right, that's true.
But they do lots of stuff.
That's a really good point. But they don't write. They don't write books, and which are truly changing and start foundations, and which become. I mean, you've started a movement. It's beyond a book. Tell us about this next phase, the Lean In phase. What you're doing now.
So, along with the book's goal is to really change the numbers at the top, so that more of the conferences, a lot of us attend conferences or meetings for our industry. Do the rooms look like this, anyone?
Yeah.
Right, they don't look like this at all. And we'd like at least half the room to look like this room, and I think that's a goal we all share, but a book can only do so much. So along with the book, I started a foundation. It has its own full-time employees, which is part of the answer to how do you do it all?
Right.
You hire great people.
And when I talked to you, you hadn't even been to the foundation offices because you say you can't do everything, be every place.
I hadn't been there, but I went there for the first time last week. And my foundation team is great. And our goal is to empower women to reach any ambition they have, whether it's be a better teacher, parent, reach for a volunteer opportunity, reach for leadership in the corporate or nonprofit world. We're doing that by building a community. I hope you all join us at leanin.org. We provide free online education. So we took the Gender Studies program at the Clayman Institute for Gender Research at Stanford. They had a great program. 50 people had ever seen it or been through it. We taped the lectures, put it online with study guides, and now over 100,000 people have taken advantage of that content. We're really proud of that. And most importantly, we are helping women start circles. Women or men, we advise 10, it can be any size group, a group of people who come together as peers to support each other. And what's amazing about it is, it's these women and these men leaning in for equality. Everywhere I go, men, usually CEOs, because most of them are CEOs, say to me, "You are costing me so much money." Because all the women want to be paid as much as the men. And to them I say, I'm not sorry at all. I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
If people will read the book or join a circle or look at our online negotiating lecture and go get themselves a raise, that's awesome.
How did you deal with the one main criticism that kept coming out all year long about Lean In was the elitism argument that, well, of course you can lean in. You've, Harvard MBA with this stellar career, and you've got staff at home and at work that enable you to do all this stuff. And, your average woman just can't do that. How do you answer that?
So I was really clear up front in the book that I understand that I have resources most people don't have. Most people in this room have resources most people don't have. But leaning in is about equality. So 2 weeks ago, the census data came out. A lot of people, I think, noticed this. And what did we learn? Yet again, exactly no progress in closing the wage gap for women in this country. Since 2002, women across the board have been paid 77 cents to the dollar. If you're a woman of color, African American women are paid 64 cents, Latinas are paid 54 cents.
Yeah.
That's inappropriate and unacceptable, and leaning in is about closing those gaps that affect all of us, but actually are not less important for the women who are in this room. They're more important, and it's up to all of us to work together to close those gaps.
And I would argue that one of the reasons for that gap is there's a lot of differences between men and women, but the most radical one is pregnancy. And I found it fascinating that you commissioned Skadden Arps to do a legal memo to get companies to say it's okay to talk about pregnancy at work. Tell us what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say.
It's a really good point, because basically here's what we know. We know that we lose a lot of our high potential women either to our workforce or to the trajectory they're on during the childbearing years, right? So how do we handle that as a society? We've convinced ourselves that it's illegal to talk about it. And you know what illegal to talk about it is getting us? Nothing. No progress. Women have had 14% of the top jobs in corporate America for 10 years. So it's not illegal at all to talk about it. It's illegal to discriminate on it. My brother, who did this without talking to me, was interviewing a woman, and he said in an interview, "You may want to have kids one day." Ready? Gasp. Who says that in an interview? And if you do, that's not my business. You never have to talk to me. But I also watched as my two sisters, I'm one of them, and my wife struggled through those years. No one helped them. People were too afraid to talk about them, tiptoeing around them. No one helped them. So I want you to know, if you take this job and you work on my team, my door is open. Come talk to me anytime.
So the employer can initiate it, or just...
Yes. I think it is best practices, and this is what Skadden Arps said. It's not illegal. It's best practices to say to every employee, we want to retain our women. We want to help women take maternity leave, come back. We want to be flexible, whatever career works for you, but we're investing in you, and we want you to know you won't go through this alone. If you want to talk to anyone here about any of your plans, maternity leave, having children, coming back, please come talk to us. Mm-hmm. We're here to help you.
Right.
How many people were given that offer in their companies?
Yeah, I remember...
What difference would that have made? It would have made the hugest difference for me.
I remember my first pregnancy, I was at the LA Times and just like downing saltine crackers and trying not to throw up and just hiding it as long as I could and being afraid.
And what you're afraid of is important. Why do women hide? We all did this. We all hide our pregnancies. We hide it because we're afraid someone's going to take responsibility away from us. We're afraid someone's going to write us off before we've figured out what we want to do. And wouldn't it be better if companies said, we get it, you're the half of the population that has children, that may happen, we're here to help you plan. And what's really happened around gender is that we don't talk about it. That's how we deal. Let's talk about other things we don't talk about that we can start talking about in our companies. We know that women don't get the mentorship and sponsorship men do. We know that, and we talk about it all the time in one certain way. But here's what I've never heard anyone say, and so I've been saying, is that 64% of American managers, male managers, are afraid to be alone in a room with a woman. So what does a woman and a woman, or a man and a man at a meeting look like? Or at a bar on a work trip? Mentoring? What does a man in a room alone in a room look like? What does an older man and a younger woman alone in a room look like?
Right.
I made this point in my book that we can't be afraid of what things look like because men are holding themselves back from mentoring women. I got hundreds of letters from some of the most senior men in this country saying, thank you, it never occurred to me that I was actually kind of not thinking about it, but yeah, I wasn't putting myself in that position, and I was therefore mentoring the men more than the women. I'm not gonna do that anymore. And what Lean In is about is let's put these issues on the table so we can deal with them.
I want to squeeze in a couple questions because I know people are fascinated by this subject. Anybody want to jump to a microphone quickly? Nobody. It must be me. No one's asking questions when I'm here. Okay.
She's going.
Hi, my name is Tara McKelvey with the BBC, and I have a question. What about your future? Are you going to run for office?
No.
It's funny you say that because I was actually going to ask this question. So you clearly have a change the world gene, but you've said that you don't want to run for office. So by my counting, that leaves Chief of Staff for President Hillary Clinton, World Bank President, or what else would appeal to you?
I mean, I'm doing kind of all the leaning I can do. I really believe in what Facebook does. I gave a speech last night at Howard University. It's always fun to talk to college students because their whole lives are in front of them. And they were asked what's the most important thing in picking a job, and I think I said what so many of you would say, which is find something you really love.
Right.
And I really love the industry I'm in and the work I do, and I really love being able to work on Lean In and help women feel that they can do anything the way men can.
You and I had this conversation about this sort of ball juggling, and people look at you and they wonder, you know, how is she doing this all? And you've got to be stressed, and you know, where does she drop the ball? And you answer that. I want you to answer that again. But you also said, you know, you don't get a chance to talk about how happy you are at your job because people don't want to hear that in a way. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have two issues. One is that it's really hard, and I wrote about this in my book because the demands on us have dramatically changed. If you are a working mother, and not everyone does both, but a lot of women in this room are doing both, what is expected of us at work has dramatically changed over the last 30 years. Working hours have expanded. My industry is part of the problem. What is expected of us as a mother has dramatically changed. The data shows clearly that a full-time working mother in the United States today, on average, spends as much actually interaction time with her children as a work-at-home mother did in the 1950s. Yeah. So these jobs are expanding. Our job as a mother expands, our job as home expands, and we can't do both and meet the standards of people who are only doing once. We compare ourselves to people, largely men at work, who don't have other responsibilities or don't have them at the same level. We fall short. And then we can compare ourselves to the women who are full-time work-at-home mothers, and we fall short. And then everyone else can tell us we're not as good. We can tell ourselves we're not as good, and it's all a big spiral in what we can't do. Topped off by everyone asking, how do you do it all? Tina Fey has this great point she wrote in her book. She went on a movie tour with Steve Carell, I think her co-star. Let's review. They're both comedians with their own TV show, both parents, both have kids. Yeah. They were promoting a movie. They could not be more similar. Every single reporter asked her, how do you do it all? And no one asked him.
Right.
And so that is reminding her, and all of us, you can't do it. That's why we're asking you. If we thought you could do it, we wouldn't ask you. And we don't ask men that same question. And I think that is what really, really needs to change. We need to start asking men, how do you do it all? How do you be a father and an employer?
I love that.
Right? And I think the other thing we need to recognize, and I love doing this in this room, I don't think I've done it here yet, is we have all of these messages which explicitly discourage leadership in girls. Please raise your hand. I usually do men and women, but there are no men here, so I'll just do women. Please raise your hand if you were called bossy as a child.
That's great.
Keep your hands up. Please keep your hand up if your brother was called bossy. Please raise your hand if you've been told you're too aggressive at work.
Yeah.
Please raise your hand if your male colleagues have been told they're too aggressive.
Yeah.
That's what Lean In is trying to change.
Well, speaking of bossy, I have a very bossy producer who's telling us to get off the stage, and I want us to give a round of applause and congratulations to Cheryl. 1 million copies sold. Facebook stock up 140%. You're doing good.
Thank you, guys.